Apple may have just dropped a bombshell. The more complex the task, the dumber some advanced AI systems get.
Yeah, and not just a little bit dumber. The suggestion is they can collapse entirely.
Exactly, it's kind of wild. So in this episode, we're going to unpack this Apple study. They call them large reasoning models.
LRMs.
And we want to understand why their accuracy apparently just crashes on tough tasks.
Right. And what that might mean for, the whole AGI race.
And are we maybe hitting some fundamental limits with the way AI is being designed right now? That's what the material seems to hint at.
Definitely worth digging into. So, just to set the scene a bit, Apple's researchers were looking specifically at these LRMs.
Right.
These are AI supposedly built to tackle complex problems, step by step, very logically.
More so than standard large language models like your everyday chatbot.
That's the idea, yeah. They sometimes compare them to standard LLMs in the study.
And this whole thing lands smack in the middle of this huge industry push for AGI, artificial general intelligence. Everyone's racing towards it.
Precisely. The timing makes it even more interesting.
So, what did this study actually find? How did these models handle harder problems?
Well, the core finding was pretty stark. On simple, low-complexity tasks, both the standard AI and these LRMs did fine.
Okay, makes sense.
But when you got to medium complexity, the LRMs, the ones designed for reasoning, started to stumble a bit. And then on the high-complexity stuff, that's where things really went south. Both types of models seemed to just collapse. They struggle to give correct answers consistently.
Okay, but here's the part that really jumped out at me from the research you shared.
What's that? The models apparently reduced their reasoning effort when the problems got harder.
Yeah, isn't that strange? It's totally counterintuitive.
You'd expect them to try harder, right? To use more steps, more computation, something?
Exactly. But the findings suggested the opposite, like they gave up sooner.
Were there specific examples? Because that sounds almost unbelievable.
There were. The material mentioned the Tower of Hanoi puzzle. Apparently the models failed around just 10 pegs, even when they were given the explicit algorithm.
Even with the instructions laid out? Wow.
Yeah, and another one was a simple logic riddle, something like how are a man and his son's half-brother's father connected?
Okay, I'm thinking. They're the same person, right? The man is the father?
Right, seems straightforward enough, but the sources say the models really struggled with that.
Huh. So how did people react? I imagine this caused a bit of a stir.
Oh, definitely. Some reactions were quite strong. Gary Marcus, who's often skeptical of current AI hype, reportedly called the findings pretty devastating.
Devastating. Okay, strong word.
And he had that quote, something like, anybody who thinks LLMs are a direct route to AGI is kidding themselves.
Ooh, that's pretty direct.
Yeah, and Andrew Rogoyski suggested this might mean we've hit a cul-de-sac with the current approach, like a dead end for this type of architecture.
But it wasn't all doom and gloom, was it? The sources mentioned other takes too.
No, absolutely. We need to represent those fairly. Some argued this wasn't really surprising for LLMs.
How so?
Well, they see LLMs more as incredibly advanced statistical pattern matchers. You know, the phrase stats on steroids came up.
Not actual reasoning engines.
Exactly. So from that perspective, calling them reasoning models might just be marketing. Some comments basically said, yeah, we knew they couldn't really reason deeply, suggesting the study offered zero novel insight for those already familiar with the text limits.
So there's this real tension then. The whole industry is pushing for bigger, bigger, bigger models, believing scale solves everything.
Faith and scale.
But then you have studies like this, and the reaction around it pointing to these potential hard limits, especially with complex logic.
It really does suggest that just throwing more compute power at the problem doesn't magically create the better logical deduction when things get truly tricky.
And it implies maybe they're wasting resources, like solving the easy bits fine, but then just completely failing on the core complex part.
That's a potential interpretation. Yeah, the idea that the architecture itself might struggle with combining multiple logical steps or dependencies.
So thinking bigger picture, What does this say about the fundamental architecture of these AI models we're relying on more and more?
Well, it certainly adds fuel to the debate about whether we're overestimating their ability to genuinely think like humans do.
You mean true reasoning versus just sophisticated mimicry?
Kind of. It suggests that scaling up might not be enough to bridge these core reasoning gaps. The way they're built might be fantastic for language and patterns, but may be inherently limited for really deep, multi-step logical tasks.
So this adds to that growing body of evidence about the limits of just scaling.
I think so, yes. It reinforces the idea that emerging capabilities might have boundaries we're starting to hit.
And what about the future? For AGI timelines? For research directions?
It could mean AGI is further off than the loudest voices suggest. That's one possibility.
Okay.
It might also really push researchers towards hybrid approaches, combining these big statistical models with other techniques, like older symbolic AI or logic systems.
Mixing the old and the new.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And, the reaction suggests we might see more skepticism from investors, maybe regulators, definitely researchers questioning the current path.
So it really leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? If the smartest models we have seem to kind of shut down when problems get genuinely complex, are we actually building intelligence? Or is it more like a very convincing but ultimately limited illusion of intelligence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Are we chasing something we don't fully grasp with tools that might not be up to the task?
Definitely something to think about.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for tuning into this episode. If this discussion made you rethink some of the AI hype, maybe share it. We'll be back with more explorations like this soon.